Coming up on episode 342 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Honda Passport Trailsport, the new Lincoln Nautilus, a hybrid Porsche 911 is coming this summer. Polestar has already dropped the price of the Polestar 3 by $10,000 before it even goes on sale. The passing of Marcello Gandini, data from connected cars, subscriptions for the Audi A3, some more looks at the Tesla Cybertruck, and Rivians can now supercharge. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 342 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Salmon from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
And sadly, Nicole is not feeling well today. She's sick in bed with a nasty cold and can't really talk. So we're going to let her off the hook this time. But in the show notes, you will find a link to the video that Nicole and I recorded with the Lincoln Nautilus during our drive. And so after you're done listening to this, you can go watch that and get your fix of Nicole. So,
yeah.
What have you been driving?
So this week I have been driving the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid. It's actually the let's see the big long name. It's got some. Nope, that's not it either. The 2023 Escape Titanium plug-in hybrid front-wheel drive. It's like it's titanium front-wheel drive. You're like,
yeah. Unfortunately, Ford doesn't offer the Escape plug-in hybrid with all-wheel drive. You can only get it with front drive. The regular hybrid you can get with all-wheel drive, but not the plug-in.
It's, because the plug takes up all that extra space.
Well, I mean, it is actually the battery, because the
battery's larger,
spans across the whole width under the back seat, and so if you want an Escape plug-in hybrid with all-wheel drive, Lincoln's got you covered with the Corsair Grand Touring, because they put an electric motor on the rear axle.
What's fun is that they can make a plug-in hybrid Maverick if they really wanted to. Just saying.
They could.
And it's the same. Everything's on top of the Escape platform, and there's like, oh, we could have a plug-in hybrid Maverick.
And
it would still only be front-wheel drive.
I was talking to some folks from Ford earlier this week when we were out driving the new Ranger, and we'll talk about that next week when the embargo lifts. But it sounds like they've got more Maverick variants coming, including at the very least a hybrid all-wheel drive. And the plug-in probably as well.
Hybrid all-wheel drive, that's the jam.
Yep.
Because it's probably going to be hybrid was it all-wheel drive like 50? I'm not going to look up the thing. Anyway, back to the Ford Escape. From which all these things are born from, the Ford Escape. Driving the 2023 plug-in hybrid front-wheel drive Ford Escape, the titanium, which makes it probably more expensive than it needs to be honest. If you're a huge Escape fan, then fine, go crazy, get the fancy seats with the stitching and all the additional fun little things, panoramic vista roof, the premium package for the PHEV, heads-up display, which it's one of those little
the flip-up glass panel on top of the dash.
The flip-up glass panel on top of the dash, which if it doesn't go up, if it doesn't angle itself enough, if you're tall, what happens is that you have to adjust your vision on the head-up display. So now everything is on the hood of the car. So because I'm tall and because the glass is, the glass, it can't, they've set it at, whatever angle. I'm assuming 90 degrees. And so in order to adjust the actual display itself, it's now at the edge of the roof is the speed and the ADAS information, lane keep assist, etc. Which, yeah, fine, it's not that big of a deal, but it feels kind of like, especially when you're driving something called the Titanium. I think that's where sort of gets lost. Yeah, this vehicle has the best part about this vehicle is that it's a PHEV plug-in hybrid. You can plug it in, wait all night, get up the next day, and drive up to 37 miles. 37 miles of EV only range. I didn't quite get that during my drive. I wasn't able to do like we're recording on Saturday. Saturday's the day I test cars, so I didn't wasn't able to do the test, but it was not hitting 37 miles of EV only range in my just kind of like plugging it in and then driving it around all day. So it may your use may vary. What's interesting though is when I drive 40 EVs, those things are boom right on the dot. Whatever the EV says, whatever the EPA number is, it's like boop right on the dot for my tests. So yeah, I think maybe it's not cold. It's not, it's been actually really nice, but it has been crazy windy. So maybe that's, when you're driving, when trees are falling over, maybe driving into a headwind will do that to your car. Um, the MPG just cruising around. It says 40. I've been getting like 47, so that's great.
Yeah.
If you're just driving around, like some days because my wife has an EV, and so some of the days I didn't charge it and I'm still driving it around even though the battery is officially depleted. And it's still adding energy to the battery via the engine and via regenerative braking. And I'm getting 47 miles per gallon. So that right there is like, even if you don't plug it in, like, and you should because you're going to save so much more money. I'm still getting really, really good gas mileage out of this vehicle. So kudos to Ford for that. It's front wheel drive. Like Sam was saying, if you want all wheel drive, you can't get the plug-in, so that's sort of a bummer. Hopefully they'll change that, but it's front wheel drive. I think for most people is fine. I think a lot of us are really everything's all wheel drive now, so because of that, we're expecting everything to be all wheel drive. It's not that big of a deal. It does have USB A and C plugs, which is nice. So if you're that type of person who's maybe they have an they have an iPhone that doesn't have USB-C and then a new iPhone, or if you have a Android, or if you just want to plug other things in, whatever cables you got,
yeah, if you just
you're
happen
good.
to have some old, USB-A cables, you can still use them in your Escape.
Yeah, so you can still plug it in. The driving, the Escape is a fine car, and that's it's not exciting. There's nothing exciting about the Escape. No one's ever like walked into the showroom and like did a fist bump, Escape, or like jumped up in the air because they just bought an Escape. They're just like, I need a car that'll get me around. I have Fords. I like Fords. Oh, the Escape, it's the right size. You can put people in the back seat. It's got some good cargo space. Fine. I'll get an Escape. And then you just drive off, and everyone forgets what kind of car you drive because it just sort of looks like everything else on the road. It's almost like an invisible car. But for a lot of people, I think that's totally fine.
Most people won't have a problem with that.
Yeah, you're fine. I just need a good car that gets me around, that gets good gas mileage. Even if I forget to charge it overnight, you're still going to get some good gas mileage. If you do charge it, and again, you should, you'll get that 37 miles of range, maybe a little less, maybe 35, 34. But according to the Department of Transportation, the average person drives 37 miles a day. So if you're an average person and you plug this thing in and you average it out, because this is a pretty average car, everything, you're going to get 37 miles. You're going to right on the dot. You'll use a little bit of gasoline for, maybe if you decide to go, you have big hills or whatever. But yeah, it's an average car.
For the most part, if you plug it in daily, you'll be able to do all your driving as if this was an EV. And then when it's time to take long trips, it won't matter because you
You're
can
golden.
just keep on going.
You keep on trucking. Well, not trucking. Keep on crossovering. The 2024, I got the 2023. I don't know why. The 2024 starts at $40,500. The version I got, the base price is $38,500. So if you want to save some cash, look for a 2023 in a lot, and you'll save about $1,500. Um, but because I got the titanium, because all the automakers have insisted that we get the best of every car, which I mean, I guess it's nice. I would rather get like what their data says the average person buys, which I'm thinking is probably about middle of the road. I think, you know, I would rather
And
get that
in the
level.
case of the current generation of Escape, I think that would probably be like the ST line. Um,
Yeah,
is kind of that's kind of the middle of the road right now for
yeah.
the current generation.
So the middle of the road would be nice if that's what they delivered, but instead they gave me the titanium, which so at the end of the day, this vehicle is now costing you $46,815, about $8,000 more than its base price, which is, I don't feel like it has $8,000 worth of stuff that's worth paying for this, to be honest. Again,
Well, you are getting that little heads up display.
you do to get that little heads up display, which I guess it's fine. But yeah, no, I don't know. The top of the line, it's for something like this feels, I don't know. You could have just saved the money, because most of these things you probably won't use all that often. I mean, the heads up display is always awesome, but it'd be better if that was you could probably get that on the lower trim maybe. Um, yeah, that's it. I really don't. It's such a like, okay, I'm gonna get in this car, I'm gonna drive it over somewhere, and then I'm gonna come back. It's just that car. It's just there. It's again, and this is not. I'm not trying to like say, oh, boo, the Escape. It's a fine vehicle, and that's exactly what it is. A fine, invisible vehicle. That's what I think the Ford Escape, the plug-in hybrid, I think makes it a much better vehicle, to be honest. Just because that again, the 37 miles plus the MPG of about 46, 47 is what I'm getting right now. I mean, that's fantastic. So good job to Ford engineers for that.
But when you consider the fact that a regular Escape hybrid, you can get for starting closer to $30,000.
It's a big jump.
Yeah, I mean that, the $10,000 just to get from that to the plug-in hybrid, so let's see the active, the Escape, base Escape active. Um, let's see, can you get the hybrid on that? I thought you could. You used to be able to. But the ST. Oh, here we go. So the ST line with the hybrid is $33,490, and then you're looking at $7,000 more to get to the plug-in hybrid, and then with the options that were on yours, what was another $7,000 for that, at least for even for that $7,000, the savings you're going to have to make up that savings in fuel economy, because you're going to get like 40 miles per gallon with that regular Escape hybrid anyway, or 40 plus miles per gallon. You're probably never going to make up that difference
Well,
in
here's
cost.
the rub is that if you get the Escape as a lease, you can get probably like a partial credit for the
Uh,
tax thing. I'm just looking at what
maybe.
this is from March 11, 2024. So yeah, so you can get like almost like $6,800. So you can kind of offset that
Yeah,
and also get the thing.
I don't know if Ford is doing that though. I mean, in theory they could, because it's got a big enough battery that
Why wouldn't they?
most
And
other
really, I
most
feel
other
like
automakers are.
because I feel like and then that's really, I think that's at the dealership level. Unless the dealerships are not giving the
Yeah.
discount, but then because they bought it, they get the discount. But that's how they would get the discount if they did the lease. I don't know. If you're going in, check and see what the
Yeah, I
IRA.
mean, if they'll give you the IRA tax credit when you lease it, then it's a good deal, because then
Yeah,
you're down to like close to the same price as the hybrid. And in
yeah,
that case, then absolutely go for the plug-in hybrid.
yeah.
Otherwise, you might be better off going, it's the Escape plug-in hybrid's main competitor is the Toyota RAV4 Prime,
And it's
which
about
is
$3,000 more
right. And
starting.
I believe Toyota is doing the tax credit pass through on a lease on the RAV4 Prime. So the
It's
RAV4 Prime
also
will
all-wheel
give you,
drive,
yeah, it gets you all-wheel drive. It's got more power,
more
and
range.
it's and more and a little bit more range, a few miles more range.
42, five more miles. Which if
Yeah.
you're if you work 39, if your daily drive is 39 miles,
Well, there you go. You're all set. Then
yeah.
get the
So
RAV4.
for 3 grand, you get a little bit more range. You get all-wheel drive. You get a Toyota RAV4, which looks cool, to be honest. It's a bit more aggressive, it's still, pretty much it's more aggressive looking. It's got sharper lines than the Escape, so
It
more people are
stands
gonna
out a
put
little
their,
bit more than the
yeah, it
Escape.
stands out just a scooch more. They're all pretty much the same, to be honest, but it stands out just a bit more.
All right. Anything else on the Escape plug-in hybrid?
Nah.
All right. So I had an SUV that was not a plug-in hybrid this week. I had the Honda Pilot Trailsport. So over the last year or two, Honda's been adding a Trailsport trim to most of its SUVs and uh, trucks, like the Ridgeline, and this gives it a little bit more off-roady look, a little more aggressive look. They've got it on the Pilot, they've got it on the Ridgeline, they've got it on the Pilot now, or the Passport. And the Passport, is based on the previous generation of the Pilot. It's it's the same wheelbase as the Pilot, but with a slightly shorter body, and it's a 2-row rather than a 3-row. And it was always, from launch, it was always meant to be more the lifestyle vehicle, the more outdoorsy adventure type. But it's never really been a hardcore SUV. This is not something that is competing with, say, literally anything from Jeep. Um, the Trail Sport makes it a little more aggressive looking. So you get some all-terrain tires on 18-inch wheels. Um, let's see. It's got I think slightly more ground clearance than the regular ones.
This is the
Back
Passport or the Pilot?
the Passport, the
Okay, because
Passport Trail Sport.
you said you drove the Passport, then you said you drove the Pilot, so I'm confused. They're the
I'm
same
getting all
car. That's the
confused.
problem.
Yeah, that is the problem. Yeah. So overall, they're both really good vehicles. I actually drove the Pilot Trail Sport last summer. I drove the Passport this past week.
All
So
right.
the Passport Trail Sport is the one I had. That's the 2-row. And so, you get some more rugged looking all-terrain tires, taller sidewalls, which in and of itself is actually probably a good thing. Especially if you live somewhere like Michigan where we have terrible roads, or you're going to take it, to go to a cabin or something. This is not a vehicle, despite the fact that when Honda launched the Passport like 4 or 5 years ago, they did the launch drive out in Moab, and we drove it in Moab in Utah, and it did surprisingly well, even on, before it got like proper all-terrain tires. But now, it'll do a little bit better. So it's got slightly more ground clearance. Last year they refreshed the front end, so it's got a little more upright fascia on it, so it looks a little more trucky and SUV like. Um, so you know this is not intended for hardcore off-road use, but they have, the Trail Sport does get a couple of steel skid plates to protect some of the more vulnerable stuff underneath the vehicle. Like I said, the all-terrain tires, that of course those all-terrain tires, give you a little bit of a hit on fuel economy, but overall, it's a generally a pretty good package. And if you want a 2-row utility that is primarily for on-road use, but kind of looks like it can go off-road a little bit, and you
You can
want
go
something,
camping in it,
yeah, I mean,
snowboarding.
it's big, it's bigger than a CRV, or a RAV4 or an Escape. So if you want more room than what you get in those more compact utilities, then this is an interesting option for you. So the one that I had did not come with a Monroney, but basically the only real option on it was the Radiant Red Metallic 2, not Radiant Red Metallic 1, but Radiant Red Metallic 2 paint.
Oh, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, which was an extra $455. Everything else is pretty much standard in here.
They have a
Um,
blue that's really nice, so just save the $500.
yeah, the diffused sky blue pearl. Oh,
Yeah.
actually, that's also 455. So it's the same price.
Oh, okay.
Only the black and the white are no
Oh,
extra cost.
free.
The other
Oh.
the interesting colors all cost extra.
I
So
want
I had the red. So came to a the powertrain in here is the same 3.5 liter V6 that Honda has been using in all kinds of their stuff for like 300 years. Still a good engine, 280 horsepower. Uh, in the next generation of this, it'll probably get replaced by a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. But for now, it still has that with a 9-speed automatic transmission. All-wheel drive comes standard on the Trailsport, so you don't have to pay extra for that.
nice.
And let's see. Hold on. I changed. Why did I do that? I changed the color on myself.
No.
Okay, there we go. Back to that price. So the total price as built was $46,350, which is about the same as that as the Escape that you had.
Oh yeah.
But this does not have a plug-in hybrid. Does not get
Wow.
47 miles per gallon. Will not go
Yeah.
37 miles on a charge. It averaged about 18, 19 miles per gallon during my week of driving, which is kind of mediocre
Yeah.
by today's standards. But aside from that, everything else about, the seats, typical of a Honda, the seats are very comfortable. The infotainment system is still Honda's older generation system, so it's not the new Android Automotive system. But it's still a fairly easy to use system. The interface is fairly clean. It's relatively responsive. The voice recognition in it, though, is pretty miserable. If I tried to use voice to, put in a destination for the navigation, it had a very, very hard time finding what I was looking for. But apart from that, the rest of it worked fine. So and most of the controls on here are still physical controls, which is a good thing.
Yay.
And yeah, $46,350 for this. So if you're looking for sort of an upper mid-size, 2-row off-roady looking SUV, the Passport is probably the Passport Trailsport's up probably worth a look. I think for most people that are considering something like this, unless you really, really feel like you need to have that kind of more off-roady look, you could probably just go with the regular Passport and save yourself quite a bit of money, because it starts, well, actually, it's not that much cheaper.
It's like 3,500, 2,500.
No, yeah, it starts at 41,900 for the EXL.
Wow.
And now there's also a black edition, which starts at $48,000. So,
Which who knows what that means.
yeah. So actually, you know what? If you're thinking about a Passport, just go ahead and get the Trailsport. Forget what I said. Just get the Trailsport, because
Yeah.
for what you're going to save on the EXL, you're probably going to spend that on extra options anyway. So,
Boom. There you go.
so there you go.
It's like if you want a little bit nicer than a Crosstrek.
Yes.
You want all-wheel drive and you don't want to deal with a CRT.
Yeah. There you go.
Wait.
CVT.
CVT. Yes. I'm like CR. I'm like nope. That's
Well,
television.
and this is quite a bit larger than a Crosstrek as well. I mean, this is more the size of the
Ascent.
The Ascent. Yes.
Yeah.
So if you want
I don't
something
think I've ever
Ascent-like
driven
without a
this.
CVT,
Oh, I think I have driven the Ascent. Never mind.
I have not.
I think maybe. Oh man, I can't remember. That's a weird thing. That Crosstrek is just their money. That's their money car.
Yeah.
Just printing dollars for the folks over at Subaru.
All right. Let's move on.
Let's pretend we know what
Pretend we know what we're talking about.
what Nicole drove. Nicole drove up 911. She loved it. The end.
I have no idea what Nicole drove. She can talk about
Uh,
it next week.
yeah.
Um, but well, actually, there is one thing I do know that Nicole drove, which because I was driving with her. We were in Palm Springs, driving the 2024 Lincoln Nautilus. So this is an all new version of the Nautilus. The Ford Edge is going away. In the past, the Nautilus has shared a platform with the Edge, and the new platform is not fundamentally different from the old platform. Um, Still has the same basic architecture, same type of strut front suspension, integral link rear independent suspension, but the Nautilus is a little bit bigger than before. Um, it's also built in China now because the Edge, the Oakville assembly plant where they built the Edge and the Nautilus previously, is being retooled to build EVs starting sometime next year or late this year. And So they decided to discontinue the Edge. They're bringing in the Nautilus from China, where it actually sells better than it does here. That's why they're building it there. And it adopts, the new design language that Lincoln's been using on their vehicles that they've launched in China and have refreshed on their vehicles here over the last year and a half or so. So the look that we see on here actually started a couple of years ago with the Lincoln Zephyr sedan in China. So a little bit larger grille, the kind of signature lighting. They're doing the light bar all the way across. It goes underneath the slim headlamps and kind of have like the feather like look of the signals on the corners, and then the turn wraparound turn down tail lights. It's a good looking premium mid-sized SUV. And one of the cool things that they added to this is the same style of door handles that they had on the Continental sedan, the last generation Continental sedan. So there's a trim strip that runs along the base of the side glass, and the door handles are sort of integrated into this. So when you look at it kind of straight on from the side, the door handle, it looks like there's no door handles, but they're actually there. They just kind of swell out from that trim strip. And they work easily, they're easy to grab, unlike the style of door handles that pop out of the doors. These don't have to pop out, so they're never going to get stuck when there's snow or ice on them or anything like that.
Good.
Or
I
just
don't like the pop out door handles. I'm just gonna. It's just
Yeah,
such.
they're always
It's
too
it's
finicky.
it's yeah. It's finicky and it's fancy for the sake of fancy.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, we save .000000001 and drag of efficiency. I'm just
Well,
like,
we'll get to fancy for the sake of fancy in a minute.
all right.
So
They
I
moved
mean,
that somewhere else.
yeah, the exterior, it looks good. The interior actually looks really nice too. I mean, I like what Lincoln's been doing with their interiors over the last 7, 8, 9 years. It looks completely different from what you'll find in a Ford. Looks much more premium. It looks like a premium vehicle. No issues there. One of the unique thing for the Nautilus, especially for North America, is this the first application in a Ford or Lincoln vehicle of a full width, what they sometimes refer to as a coast to coast display. So there's a 48-inch display in this thing, and it's curved. It sits further forward at the base of the windshield, so it's not a touch screen. You don't touch this particular display. And it's actually technically not a single 48-inch display. It's actually two displays. There's a small bezel. There's about a quarter inch to a half inch of bezel in between the two segments of the display, but it's fine. You're not even going to notice it. And the first time we saw something like this was back I think in like 2018. There was a Chinese EV startup called Byton that is now defunct. But when they showed their first the concept of their first vehicle, or what was intended to be their first vehicle, the M Byte, it had this same style of display that was pushed further forward, full width. And the idea is to have it, you know, as an alternative to a heads-up display, to have it as something that is closer to the driver's line of sight. So you have all the information up there. You're not fiddling with the touchscreen as much because you can't touch this particular display. and so you have more space for information like the maps and other stuff. And when we first saw it last year, there was some concerns, about the passenger side of this display because it does run all the way across in front of the passenger. And is that actually going to be distracting? And I can say, thankfully, the answer to that is no, it's not distracting because the way they've arranged this is the first vehicle that Ford is launching in North America that uses their new Android Automotive based infotainment system. And so, what you find on the driver's side, about the left hand 2/3 of this is dedicated to driver information. So speedometer, turn signals, warning lights, that sort of thing. And then the rest of the left hand side of the display is for the map, for the navigation map. And that's where it shows that. So you don't have to look down, for your navigation prompts and things like that. It's all right there. You can glance at it while you're still watching the road. And I think it works really well. Nicole and I both agreed on that. That part works really well. And then on the passenger side, there's no option for watching videos or anything like that on the passenger side of the screen, like you have in some Jeeps and other vehicles. What you can put up there, you can either put up nothing at all if you want. You can leave it blank, which is fine. Or you can put up to 3 widgets up there with various information. So you can have your trip computer with your fuel economy and range and stuff. You can have a weather widget. You can have the media widget that shows what's playing right now. And because you've got a fairly large area and only 3 widgets, the good thing that they've done is that there's not a lot of information density there. So it doesn't look cluttered. They've used nice big fonts that are very easy to read. And so you can glance over there, just glance really quick, see, oh, it's 62 degrees out. Or, there's the song that's playing, whatever. And the reality is most of the time when you're driving, you forget that it's even there. So it's not distracting at all. So that's good because what you don't want is another distraction over there. How do you control all this stuff? Well, there's also there back in the more traditional place in the center stack, there is a touchscreen there. It's a 12-inch touchscreen. And so that sits down and that's within your reach. So you got a bunch of physical controls on the center console. You got the usual Lincoln piano key for the controls for the shift. There's a big volume knob that looks like a BMW iDrive knob. When we first went to grab it, it's like, thought that it was like an iDrive knob for controlling what goes on the screens, but no, it's just a volume knob. It's just a big volume knob, and that's good. It's fine, And there's some switches for drive modes and things like that. And then the touch screen is where you can control what's playing. You get various other controls, including, sadly, the vent controls.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. So some year back when Tesla launched the Model 3, they did something really dumb, which a lot of people thought was really cool because it looks kind of cool.
It
You
looks
look
cool
at
for
the
about
dashboard of a Tesla Model 3
5
or Model
minutes.
Y or now the S and the X. And the same, Rivian copied that for the R1. There's just like a slot in there right in the middle of the dash. There's no vents. There's nothing to grab to move around to direct the airflow. You do it all through the touchscreen in those cars. And somebody at Lincoln thought, hey, that's a cool idea. Let's do that.
That's what the kids love.
That's a really terrible idea. Because if you've driven a Rivian or you've driven a Tesla, and what the Lincoln folks tried to tell us was, when we complained about this, yeah, but how often do you actually move your vents?
Oh,
And
Lincoln.
it's like, do you guys drive your cars, on days when, perhaps it's, maybe the sun is blasting down on you from one side and you're on a road that's maybe not going straight. And, sometimes, going in a slightly different direction or you just want to change the airflow a little bit and you can just reach out and grab that little handle on your traditional vents and move it wherever you want. You can't do that in the new Nautilus. In the new Nautilus, across the bottom of that touchscreen, there's a strip of controls for the climate control, so you can adjust the temperature and fan speed and things like that, and turn on the defogger and so on. And in the middle of that, and it took Nicole and I a while to find this. We were trying to figure out, okay, where, because they showed it to us. We had the day before we had a demo of this, and they said, oh, and here's where you can control the vents. You can just drag the things and have the airflow wherever you want. And then we couldn't remember how to get back to that screen, and we're looking through the menus. Whoever was in the passenger side, was looking through all the menus trying to find it, and we could not find it. And finally, when we got to the lunch stop, we asked, how do you get to the vent control screen? I said, oh, it's that
Oh,
button right in the center bottom. You tap that, and then the vent control screen pops up. So, oh, okay. So the second part of the drive, when we were trying to do that, turns out that, when you drive and your arm is stretched out and, the road is not as smooth as a billiard table, your arm tends to move around, your hand tends to move around a little bit, and it's hard to hit touch targets. And if you're trying to
yep.
drag the targets around on the screen to control whether you want the airflow directly on your face or just kind of over your shoulder, to get some cool air, but you don't want it blowing right on you, it is a royal pain in the neck to do that. It's a terrible
Yeah.
design. Please, anybody, any designer, any engineer at an automaker that is considering using this approach, yes, it gives you a ever so slightly cleaner looking dashboard because you don't have those handles. You just have a slot there where the air flows through. It's still a stupid idea. It's a terrible human machine interface. Just
It's
give
not
us the
so
handles.
bad.
Yeah. And then when I drove the Ranger this week, which we'll talk about next time, it has traditional vent controls. It was so nice to be able to just reach up and grab and direct it wherever I want. Um, so there's that. From a functional standpoint, that's probably the single biggest issue we had with the Nautilus. The Nautilus, the other thing that that you might find interesting, the steering wheel has been kind of flattened out a little bit, so it's not a yoke. It goes all the way around, but it's sort of oval shaped, so the top and the bottom have been kind of squished. And that's so that when you're driving, it the top part of the steering wheel is not gives you a free view of that screen that's right in front of you. And that worked fine. If you are someone that drives with your hands in the 10 and 2 position, it's going to take you a couple of minutes to getting used to kind of the shape of the wheel. If you
It
drive
should be
nine,
9 and 3
yeah, if you drive
because
9 and 3, then you won't even notice it. It's not a
the
problem at all.
government changed it to 9 and 3 like 10, 15 years ago because of airbags.
Yep.
If you're 10 and 2, your hands will get smacked away when the airbag goes off. If it's 9 and 3, you're less likely to get your hand to hurt yourself. You get
Yes.
hurt by the bag exploding. So 9 and 3 people, just like a race car driver.
Yep.
I
Absolutely.
know I know it's going to be hard. It's decades and decades of you doing 10 and 2, 9 and 3.
Let's see what else. Yeah, the Nautilus is nice and roomy. Lots of space inside for, for certainly for 4 adults to stretch out. And five, if they're not too wide in the back seat. And it's got the back seat can slide forward and back about 8 inches, so you can adjust. If you need more cargo space, you can move the seat forward a little bit. Otherwise you can move it back and give just tons of rear leg room. Very roomy. It drives fine. This is not a sports car. There's almost no steering feedback, unfortunately, but the ride quality was fine. It's comfortable. There's decent body control. It's, as Lincolns tend to be, it's fairly quiet. Um, and then my only other major complaint with the Nautilus was the pricing. It's a little expensive. And at first, as a premium SUV, it didn't, when I looked at the pricing sheet, it didn't look that bad until I actually started comparing it against some other vehicles. So you can get the Nautilus with it all new Nautiluses are all-wheel drive, so there's no front-wheel drive Nautilus anymore. And they have three trim levels: the Premier, Reserve, and Black Label. And you can get a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, which if it was in a Ford vehicle, it would be badged as an EcoBoost, but it's not. So it's just a 2-liter turbocharged engine for Lincoln. They don't use the EcoBoost branding. And 250 horsepower. It's a good engine, plenty of performance. And in fact, it actually feels kind of better than the optional engine, which is a hybrid. So for the first time, Ford in their transverse engine vehicles, they're doing the hybrid powertrain with the same 2-liter turbocharged engine instead of a naturally aspirated engine. So you get 310 horsepower. So you get 60 more horsepower than you do with the non-hybrid version. But because the hybrid uses an eCVT, it actually feels less lively. It does, even though you've got more power, it is a little bit heavier. It's about 150 pounds heavier. And the CVT just kind of seems to sap the life out of it. And so it was actually more fun to drive the gas engine with less power than to drive the hybrid version. And during our drive, I mean, we were driving fairly rapidly. And so we were only seeing about 23 miles per gallon indicated. It's rated at 27 combined. Once we have a chance to, get one out of the press fleet and spend a little more time with it, we'll have a better idea of what the true fuel economy is. But it's not particularly impressive fuel economy for a hybrid. And the thing is, it's also kind of expensive. Like I said, the Premier starts at $50,415. But the Black Label or even the Reserve, the Black Label hybrid gets up
Why
into the
why
mid 70s.
why are they naming these things after booze like levels?
I don't know.
That seems ill-advised.
Yeah.
Like, well, we can get a whiskey. Oh, you know what we should do? We should name our car after whiskey.
The Nautilus Black Label starts at $74,250.
Think how much whiskey you could buy with that.
And even the Reserve is $55,000. For that kind of money, you can buy a Volvo XC60, for starting under $60,000. You can get a Volvo XC60 plug-in hybrid. You can get a BMW X5 plug-in hybrid, or you can get a Mercedes-Benz GLE plug-in hybrid. And the XC60 has the shortest range of the bunch at 36 miles of electric range. And the other two, the BMW and the Mercedes, are both over 40 miles of electric range now. I think the BMW is almost 48 miles of electric range now. So I find it really hard to recommend this car over the European equivalents with a plug-in hybrid powertrain, because it's just not a great value proposition.
Yeah, yeah. And in other news, Hormel had a bacon that was a black label apple cider. It
Oh,
was
did
for a
they
limited
really?
time, and it was during it was last fall, so I don't think you can find it anymore. So booze, bacon, and I don't know if it was infused with booze or not. But and then Lincoln vehicles. Such a weird decision.
Yeah. I mean, the one that we were driving most of the time, we were driving a Reserve hybrid, and we priced it out, and it was just about $60,000, which is more expensive than the price of the plug-in hybrids from Europe. So
Yeah,
it's a
that's a tough sell.
yeah, it is.
If
Yeah.
if
If
if you're like, yeah, I only buy American cars, then all right, fine.
if you're comparing this to like a Lexus RX or an Infiniti QX50, I think I think it's a better looking vehicle than either of those. There's a
Mm.
lot that I like about this vehicle over those vehicles. But when you start pulling in those German and Swedish models, it's a lot tougher to make the case for this.
Yeah, it's tough with those cars look so nice.
And
I mean, I
then,
do like the way the Nautilus looks to be.
yeah, no, it's a great looking vehicle. But and then you got that whole thing with the vents, and that's
Oh, the
almost kind of
vents.
a deal breaker.
I move the vents so much because I want them on my hand because I get like really cold hands,
Hmm.
and then I don't want them on my hands, and
Right.
then so like I'm driving, so I'm taking them off my hands, and then I'm like moving them, and then I want it on my arm. Now I don't want it on my arm.
Well,
I
this
move the
does have a
vent.
heated steering wheel. So,
That's good.
you
All
could
right.
just, turn on the heated steering wheel and leave the vents off your hands. So
All
there's
right.
that.
But I do move the vents way more than than I
Yeah.
thought I did, and I didn't realize that until the first time I drove the Model 3, and I was just getting angry because I just didn't even bother. I'm like, I'll just
Yeah.
be uncomfortable now.
Yeah. And the same is true in all the Rivians. The Rivians are all the same way, including the upcoming R2. They for some reason decided to copy this, and there's some Chinese brands that are also doing this. So it's a bad trend. Please just give us the handles. It's
I will get
you know
in if it's a
you,
cold morning. You get in and you just blast the heater, but initially the heater is cold
yeah,
because has to be warmed up. So I move the vents away from me,
right.
and then as I feel the car warming up, then I move the vents back towards me.
Yeah.
So now I have to like do that in a screen. And when I'm parked, yeah, fine. But now that I'm driving on my way to wherever my destination is, and I have to move them back, I'm like, hold on. Instead of just like grabbing that little nib that's pointing out, that's poking out from the vent, I have to go into a thing and find a thing and do the thing now. Slide. Oh, I hit a bump. Now it's like shooting up at the roof.
So that's the new Lincoln Nautilus. Go get
I think
one.
everyone knows how we feel now about the the vents. We just want our climate controls to be buttons. That's that's what my
Yes. Buttons and just a little handle on the vent so I can move it
little
exactly where I want.
little
Because
physical
you
things.
know,
That's
you
all
know
we
the
want.
great thing about those manual vents? They work 100% of the time. They never fail.
Yeah,
They're easy to
yeah.
use. They never fail. I have never had one stop working on me. And I can imagine, because you've got some kind of motor and some flaps back in somewhere in the
Yeah.
dash, because you're adding complexity here for no good reason. It's a more expensive system than just having the handles.
Which is so weird because Tesla, doesn't have a dash cluster because it's too expensive.
Right.
Does, oh well, design, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, no, you did it because, but I think someone, probably the CEO of Tesla, was like, what'd be cool is if you could do it with your fingers,
Yeah.
and then it'd be, and so instead of you getting a dash cluster, now you gotta do this thing, swipe and drag and whatnot in order to just get the vent where you want it. And
Yeah.
then you probably like, oh, you got to figure out exactly where it goes. No, hold on, let me do this. Looking away from the road. Just a bad scene all the way around.
But if you watch the video that they'll have the link in the show notes, you can see how that system actually works. Nicole and I recorded that out in California. All right. Next up, another hybrid. This time from Porsche. Porsche is launching a bunch of new vehicles this year. They've got a refreshed Taycan. They got a third generation Panamera. They got the new Macan, and they also have a mid-cycle update on the 911 that will, for the first time, include a hybrid.
Da, da, da. People are going to be so angry on Porsche forums right now. Oh,
Well,
man.
they don't have to buy the hybrid version.
But they're going to be so angry. Oh, there's a Boxster near my house. Dark green for sale.
Oh
I
yeah.
haven't stopped and looked at the price because
First gen Boxster or second gen?
second gen. I I'm not going to look at it because I can't afford that.
Well, even if you can afford the car, the problem is the cost after you buy the car
I
for
know,
parts and
I
repairs.
know, I
That's
know.
where Porsches get crazy expensive.
Yeah, they're just so wonderful to drive. But I have my BRZ. I'll be happy. I'm
Yeah.
happy. I'm happy. I'm
Yeah.
happy.
Okay. So would you be happy with a hybrid 911?
Sure. I still believe when the Taycan came out, every automaker went out and bought the Taycan. And then they saw what Porsche had done with the chassis control, with a large battery. in a Porsche and how they sort of defied most of the laws of physics with that vehicle, and they went, "Ah, man," and they went back to what they were doing with their car, and they went back to their chassis person, and they said, "Bill or Sheila or whatever their name is, I need you to go out and drive that Porsche, and then I need you to come in and make what we have better." So
Well,
I'm
now
not
now they
really
now they have
I'm
an
not
even faster Taycan.
I know. So I am not concerned about the extra weight of a battery. I'm not concerned about the extra anything that Porsche adds into their vehicles because they have wizards working in the chassis department, as far as I can tell. Wizards.
And my guess is that when you can, because what they're doing is they're putting the electric motor on the front axle, and then you get the battery, and that this one, knowing Porsche, probably will not be noticeably heavier or not significantly heavier than a regular gas powered all-wheel drive 911.
Yeah, you won't even know.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part. It's smart that they put in the front because then every time you stop, you get that dive, you get that extra regen.
Yep.
You know why? Because they're Porsche. They know what they're doing.
I'm just surprised that it's taken Porsche this long to do a hybrid 911. Because they back in 2010, when I was still writing for Autoblog and other outlets, I covered the 911 GT3R hybrid, which was their GT3 hybrid GT3 race car that they ran in a bunch of races in 2010. It was a one-off. They ran it in the Nürburgring 24 hours and some other races, and they brought it to the U.S. and ran it at Petit Le Mans. And I went there with Porsche and wrote about it for Popular Mechanics. And that one, they had a similar setup with the electric motor on the front axle, but that one used the flywheel system that they later used that Audi used on the R18 e-tron LMP1 Le Mans car. And you know this, I'm just surprised that they haven't done this sooner in production. It's been 14 years since that car, but they're doing it now. It'll be available later this summer.
It's yeah. Everyone settle down. It's gonna be fine.
Yep.
That's I'm not in the forums. I just know how Porsche people can be. And God bless them for their yeah insanity.
All right, Polestar. Polestar's got a couple of new cars launching in North America this year. They've still got the Polestar 2. The Polestar 3 is finally coming. It's in production now in China. And they have been doing pilot production in South Carolina at the Volvo factory there, where they also build the S90s and other stuff, and they'll be building the EX90 there. And the Polestar 3 will also be built there. Last year, they announced pricing for the Polestar 3. So this is a new two-row, crossover, electric crossover, 111 kilowatt hour battery pack. Last year when they announced the pricing, it started at a little over $83,000. Now they have decided, yeah, that's too expensive. So we're chopping 10 grand off the price.
10 grand.
Yep.
It also puts all but the super fancy one underneath that $80,000 roof target. What's that word?
Threshold, ceiling.
Threshold. There we go. Ceiling. Thank you.
Yes.
Roof. The roof. Under the roof of the yeah.
For tax credits, yes.
For tax credits, yes.
So Polestar 3 deliveries are scheduled to start in the second quarter of this year. So that means sometime between April and June. And the base model with a mere 489 horsepower and 620 foot-pounds of torque starts at 73,400. And that all of them now include the pilot pack. So with their pilot assist system as standard. And then it goes up from there. Add the plus pack to that base model, adds another $5,000 or 5,500. And then the performance pack cranks that up to 79,400. And then performance pack, pilot pack, and plus pack takes you up to $84,900.
I'm gonna say just get the entry level. Because
Yeah,
the plus pack, you're like, oh, I get some
yep.
extra ADAS stuff. And whoop-de-doo.
315 miles of range, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. I mean, the performance pack only drops the 0 to 60 time from 5 to 4.7 seconds,
Ooh, 0.3 seconds. What
which
what are you
is
doing?
still plenty fast enough.
You don't need to go that fast anywhere
Yeah.
in an SUV.
And Polestar has said that if you lease, you will get the $7,500 off on all Polestar 3s.
All versions.
Yep.
Wow. So there you go. You're getting your Polestar fixing
Yep.
for less money if that's your jam.
All right. So this past week, Marcello Gandini died at the age of 85. If you don't know his name, you almost certainly know the work he's done over the last 50 odd years. Um, his his resume, he was a designer. His resume includes vehicles like the original Lamborghini Countach, the Lamborghini Miura, um,
Oh, that made
the Chisetta V16T, which was that design was originally intended to be the Diablo, but Lamborghini decided, yeah, now we want to go a little different direction with it. So he sold it to somebody else, and they built this crazy V16 supercar, which I think about a dozen or so were actually built. The Lancia Stratos was another one of his amazing designs. He did a bunch of really incredible stuff. And he also did the E12 5 Series. So the original BMW 5 Series was a
which
Gandini
looks,
design.
yeah, the E12 5 Series looks fantastic. It's
Yeah.
just a great looking vehicle. Every time I see one, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Uh, and he also did the Audi 50. My friend Brett Scott actually has one.
What?
Yeah, he imported one several years ago, and he has one. It's pretty cool little car. It's
Are
based
you
on the
are you,
same platform as the first gen VW Polo.
Yeah, or you can just get the Rivian R2 because it's essentially that car. That's what the the Audi 50 is, the
Yeah,
R3.
yeah, except the
Riv-
R3 is a lot bigger
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
than
I
the
mean,
Audi
yeah,
50.
everything's bigger.
Yeah,
It's like we're Texas now.
exactly. So yeah, sad to see, but he had a good run. He did some
Oh
amazing work
God,
over his life.
just an incredible like impact on the automotive world.
Yep.
Just at Lamborghini, just those two cars, the Countach and the Miura, just oh my God. I mean, he introduced the world to. He created the supercar.
Yes,
That's it.
yeah, essentially with the Miura. You
The
know,
Miura is the beginning of the supercar.
yeah, I mean it was gorgeous. It had a transverse mounted V12, which was just bonkers for the time.
Yeah.
And it's still one of the most beautiful cars ever built.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Should bring it back as an EV.
Yeah.
That's my thing for everything now. Just bring it back as an EV.
All right, let's talk about data.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, there's last week, Kashmir Hill published a story in the New York Times about the how the data from your cars is being used. And for a lot of people, this was news. For those of us that have actually been paying attention, it's actually not news. It's you know one the first example she gives is about the data that um, GM shares with LexisNexis, vehicle data. So if you have a vehicle that has any kind of telematics system in it, the automaker is collecting all kinds of data. Unless you have specifically turned it off, um, there's data being streamed from your car about where you go, how you drive, what you do. If it's an EV, how often you charge, where you charge, and it's used for originally, it was mainly used, when GM first launched OnStar in 1996, you know, it was the main purpose of it was to provide some services to customers, like being able to remotely lock and unlock your car, get emergency service. If you got into a crash and airbags went off, it would automatically call 911 and send your location, things like that. And they've added all kinds of things to it over the years. In the last 15 years, automakers have started collecting the data about how vehicles are used and feed it into their product planning process, to, how they design vehicles. It's like, what features are people actually using? How are they charging? Like, for example, when Chevy did the second generation Volt, a lot of people asked, why it didn't have DC fast charging on it. And GM said, well, looked at the data about how people were using first generation Volts. 90% of Volt customers were just charging off of 120-volt outlets. They weren't even using a level 2 charger. They were just using a level 1, just a regular outlet. So, given the size of the battery in the thing, it didn't make sense to do the extra cost of DC fast charging. And there's other features. We talked a couple of weeks ago about Ford, is going to be removing active park assist from their vehicles because people don't actually use it. It's a feature that they put in there, but nobody, almost nobody uses it. But in recent years, they've also started sharing this data with insurance companies,
Well,
among
sharing
other
isn't the
things.
correct word. Selling. Selling is the correct word.
Well, yes.
Sharing's like, oh, hey, we have this thing. It'd be nice if you also had it. Instead, like, hey, we have this information from drivers. They don't really know that we're sharing it with other people. By the way, give us money for the thing we're sharing, which is really selling.
Well, to be fair, customers do have to opt in for that data to be shared with
Yeah, but
insurance
they're not
companies.
told exactly what's happening for many of, especially the GM one. The GM,
Yeah.
how GM's been doing it is pretty shady. Like if
Yeah.
you have to like, well, if you go into this like huge terms of service and find you'll find it, but
Yeah.
no one is going through the terms of service in their car. Hold on, sweetie. We can't go out tonight. I got to spend 3 hours reading the terms of service for me to share data with the automaker of the car that we just bought. Oh, it turns out they're also selling it.
Yeah. Well, I think it was probably about a decade ago that we started getting usage-based insurance plans. I think Progressive was the first company to do this, where they would offer you a dongle to plug into your OBD2 port in your
Yeah,
car. And, if you plug
Metro
that in,
Mile is sort of the big company now.
yeah, and there's a bunch of companies doing this now. And if you plug that in, they collect data, and they would give you discounts on your insurance premiums. Well, you had to know that sooner or later it was going to go the other way around. Yes, they'll start off, if you share the data, if you give them the data, they'll give you a discount on your insurance premiums based on how you drive. But sooner or later it was bound to get to the point where, okay, you are riskier. Your driving habits are much more risky than average. So we're going to start charging you more for
Yeah, but that's
insurance.
Metro. You're telling people you've made a commitment to these people where he's like, hey, give me your thing. I want to plug it in, and I know. Versus the GM, like, hey, we're just taking this information. You probably don't know you're sharing it. By the way, now your insurance is more expensive.
Yeah. Well, and I think we might have talked previously about Tesla. Tesla's got their own
Oh,
insurance
their
that
own
they offer,
insurance, yeah.
and yeah, I mean, most car insurance, every 6 months you renew it, and they will adjust your premiums up or down based on your claims history and things like that. But they it's only once or twice a year that they adjust your premiums. Um, with Tesla and now some other companies, they are adjusting your premiums almost in real time based on your driving behavior. So Tesla will change your premiums from month to month, and not by a little bit, but by a lot.
Because you
And
decide you want to show your friends ludicrous mode.
yeah, ludicrous mode, how fast will this thing brake, how fast will it go around corners, all this stuff. And so if you do that, they're going to charge you more for insurance. Tesla gives you all these cool features. It's like, wow, look at the performance you're getting when you buy our cars. Oh, and by the way, if you actually use that performance, we're going to charge you a lot more for your insurance. And this is starting to happen with other manufacturers now too. Because the insurance companies have more data to feed into their risk models, and so they can do what should be much more accurate risk models, for individual drivers, more tailored risk models, and give you, if you are a safe driver, then, you should conceivably be, paying less for insurance. If you have risky driving behavior, you're going to pay more for it.
I wonder if they've lowered anyone. Like say you're a GM driver, you drive you're careful, you don't slam on the gas, you don't slam on the brake, and then one day whatever your insurance company, farmers or whoever, it's like, hey, you're gonna save $200 a year on your thing. I wonder if that's happened, or if they're like, hey, he's a good driver, we don't need to adjust his stuff, he's fine.
The reality is probably not, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You got 18-year-old
I
who's like drives like a 50-year-old. They're probably still not going to give
yeah.
little Jimmy, good insurance rates.
So, if you're going to buy a new car, the reality is it's going to have connectivity built in. You can get it turned off. You can disable it. But that also means that you're also going to be giving up a lot of potential features. Like especially if it's an EV, like being able to monitor your charging, or find chargers, get information about chargers while you're driving, while you're on a road trip, things like that. And so that's not great. But I think probably what needs to happen is, well, I mean, what definitely needs to happen is we need to have some data privacy laws in the US, which we
Oh
don't
yeah,
have.
yeah. Or
And
it's just willy-nilly give everything whatever they want.
yeah, consumers need to have more control over what data is shared and with whom,
Yeah,
rather than just, agreeing to one massive terms of service and, then they can do whatever they want with it.
yeah. It's like all or nothing here.
Yeah.
And if you want nothing, sometimes you got to jump through a lot of hoops to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Just just ask everyone with a Roku TV right now.
Oh, yeah.
You got to write them a letter with everyone's name and like age. And, you should, yeah, you should. I mean, I feel like you should give the option of like, okay, I want you to have my data. It's fine if I share my data with you, but you're not allowed to share my data with third parties.
And
But
technically you can
shouldn't.
do that. You can go to the automaker and you can say, I don't want to share data with third parties, but there may be some third parties that you do want to share data with, like charging companies, for example. And, so we need more control, more granularity over that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and, just something else to keep in mind. If you happen to have your phone in your car with you, don't forget your cell carrier knows everything you're doing too. They know how fast you're accelerating, how fast you're braking,
Yeah.
where you're going.
We need
So
better data control in the United States.
yep, absolutely. And cell carriers are absolutely selling your data to data brokers as well.
Oh yeah. Every time you're on the internet, data brokers. Everything's data brokers now.
Yep.
That's the big money. Sorry, everybody. We all know everything. Well, they do.
Speaking of selling stuff,
Whew, let's all get sad now for a little bit.
Audi it just recently launched the new A3. And apparently they've decided to include lots of hardware, lots of cool hardware in the vehicles as standard equipment, to simplify their builds. But they are requiring people to pay for subscriptions for stuff that we used to pay for just one time.
You pay up front, you're good to go. This
Yeah.
is, and some of these things are so like dual zone climate control. What? That's either you have it or you don't. Adaptive cruise control. Come on, that's like your everyday high beam headlight assist. These are all everyday things that you use.
Yeah. Um,
Boo.
if you want to use CarPlay or Android Auto, you'll have to pay to upgrade the entire infotainment system to unlock smartphone integration. Um, we'll
You're,
see how long this lasts.
remember BMW used to make you pay for Apple CarPlay,
Yeah.
and everyone just kept yelling at them for years and years and years, and then
And
finally they're like, fine.
and all right now, this is for the European market. Apparently Audi USA has said, they're going to do it a little bit differently. The um, let's see, the upcoming A3 model in the US will leverage the same offer structure for function on demand is the previous 2024 model year. This functionality includes options, two specific features that are available specifically in the US market: enhanced navigation to enhance the full Audi navigation experience, which includes MMI and Audi Connect Prime, and adaptive cruise assist, which extends the capability of standard cruise control so it's just adaptive cruise control. So
Just because, yeah.
those are the only two things that Audi USA is planning to charge subscriptions for. Everything else, you pay for it once.
So one of them you can just do with your phone. The other one is like if I'm driving a premium car, it doesn't have adaptive cruise control. I have to pay for that. I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
I either pay for it up front. I'm not. I don't want to give it. No. I just unsubscribed to a bunch of things recently.
Yeah.
Because on your iPhone you can just go to the App Store,
Yeah.
and it's like you could just go to your profile and just click on subscriptions. It shows you all the things you're subscribing to, and I'm like, nope, 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 nope.
I do that on a regular basis, subscribe and unsubscribe to streaming services, depending on what's on.
Exactly. That's why streaming services are still better than cable. You ever try to cancel cable?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I want to watch a show that's on Showtime. I'm going to subscribe to it for a month or two, and then I'll unsubscribe.
Yep. Okay. Cybertruck. We haven't talked about Cybertruck yet today, so let's do that a little bit. Dan Edmunds, he's an engineer, used to work at Edmunds.com, even though despite his name, he was not related to the Edmunds family that started it and owns it. Now he's doing stuff for Car and Driver, and he does this really cool series on Car and Driver, among other things, of deep dives on suspension on new vehicles. And so, he'll jack up the vehicles, take off the wheels, and these are all videos that he does. And, shows you, what's in there on the suspension, how it all works. And then he's got this ramp in his backyard that, like for various vehicles, he will drive the one front wheel up the ramp to see how much articulation there is in the suspension, how much suspension travel there is. Which is, if you're if you like to go off-roading, that's really important. You want to know how much wheel articulation you can get. So he finally got a chance to do this with the Cybertruck recently. And didn't turn out so well for the Cybertruck. He's got this formula that he does, that looks at the wheelbase, how far up you can drive up the ramp while keeping three wheels on the ground, and a couple of other things, and comes up with a score. And compared to things like the Ford Bronco and the Jeep Wrangler and even the Rivian R1T, the Cybertruck did not score all that well. And one of the reasons why is the air spring suspension. And this is an interesting thing that people should be considering, with air spring suspensions. Well, two things: air spring suspension and the fact that it's four-wheel independent suspension, as opposed to solid axles like you have on the Wrangler. The air springs are nice because you can inflate them, you can increase the ride height, you can get a lot more ground clearance. But when you do that, you're blowing up these big air bladders, and they get, what happens when you blow up a ball or inflate a ball, and when it's soft, or when it's really inflated to a high level, or with a balloon, it gets a lot more solid and it doesn't flex as much. And so you don't get as much springiness when you inflate those air springs. And so the wheels don't actually move as far. And so what he found was when he set the Cybertruck at its maximum ride height, it got about 30% less articulation than when he set it at medium ride height. So, for stuff like the Wrangler and the Bronco that have just steel coil springs, they can use their full travel all the time. But for air spring vehicles like this, doesn't quite work as well. So that's something to consider. If you're looking for an off-road vehicle, and some things like Range Rovers and so on that have a reputation for great off-road capability, they those also typically have air springs, and which is also going to limit their capabilities. So you can have lots of ground clearance or lots of articulation, but not both.
Yeah, I like this. I haven't had a chance to watch the whole video, but I'm skimming through it, and I like that he uses a calculator and a T-square, and I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is the content that I
this
that I
this
crave.
this is a true nerd.
This is such in my so much in my wheelhouse, and I'm so happy that car and driver are doing these types of things because you have this ability to, the guy's an engineer. He knows what he's talking about. And when as opposed, when you have those sort of bona fides and you can say, oh, by the way, let me get my calculator out. And
Yeah.
he's doing the little calculations on video. And he has the T-square out and he's all boop. And he's like, okay, now if you look at this, no, it's a great explainer. And I think it just sort of shows like, we I think for the most part, articulation for most people who are buying like a Range Rover or a Cybertruck or whatever,
Yeah, you're not
it
going to care.
you're not gonna really care. But if you're like one of those, like I'm gonna go like super hardcore off-roading, then yeah, this it's a great point where you're like, well, you know what? Don't get that air suspension after all. Get this, just
Well,
get
unfortunately, the Cybertruck is only offered with air suspension. You can't get it with coil spring suspension.
Well, I mean, it's also not really an
Yeah,
off-road vehicle. It's an
that's
off-road
true.
vehicle like the Passport we just talked about is an off-road
Yeah.
vehicle. Yes, you can go off-road. I mean, I can go off-road in my BRZ, if to be honest.
Yeah.
But you're going to get more. I think for most people who are going to go off-road in the Cybertruck, you need to get over the rock.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do. And you're not rock crawling. You're just driving over rocks.
Yeah. And speaking of, it's a little more on off-roading with the Cybertruck, and if you do want to take your Cybertruck off-road, what you probably want to do is take off the tires that come from the factory, those really cool looking tires with the special molding on the side that fits with those wheel
Oh,
covers. You
yeah.
don't want to use those off-road. And this is probably the real reason why we've seen a bunch of videos of Cybertrucks getting stuck doing off-road stuff. Um, and it's because of those tires. Because and to be fair, most manufacturers, for the tires that are equipped on their vehicles from the factory, those tires are usually, in a lot of cases, are not quite the same as the tires. And I think we talked about this with the guy from Tire Rack. The tires that are equipped on vehicles from the factory are typically customized in some way and are not the same as the ones you can buy as replacement tires in the aftermarket. In the case of the tires on the Cybertruck, they're Goodyear Wrangler Territory tires. But
But
one of the things that Tesla had Goodyear do was shave the tread depth by 4/32 of an inch, which is equivalent to several thousand miles of tire wear. And the reason they did this was because shallower tread depth, you get less squirm in those all-terrain tires. And so you get less rolling resistance, and the truck gets a little more range, which is important for an EV. In the so what you're ending up with, with the stock tires, even though they are technically all-terrain tires, you have a lot less tread to work with, so they have a lot less grip, which is probably why we're seeing so many of these things getting stuck when they go in deep snow or mud or dirt, trying to climb up hills, because they just don't have the tires for traction. So if you are going to take your Cybertruck off-road, get rid of the tires that came from the factory and buy some proper off-road tires, with full tread depth,
yeah, and take
and
those
replace those.
weird things off those
Well, yeah, you
tire
should do that anyway
covers
because they
because
they
they're
slice
eating
into.
into those. Yeah,
Yeah,
just take those things off.
yeah. All right. One last item about Tesla. Automotive News. Jamie Butters, who's the executive editor, Automotive News, published. He did his regular column the other day, and the topic of his column was that, one of these Automotive News does, they publish a lot of data, sales data and inventory data, things like that. Because a big part of their audience is dealers, and people who work at car companies, and they classify all the different brands, and up until now Tesla has been classified as a luxury automaker based on the fact that they generally charged luxury prices for their cars, even though arguably they didn't have the same kind of luxury features that you found on BMWs or Mercedes that were comparably priced.
Yeah.
um, Automotive News is no longer going to classify Tesla as a luxury brand going forward, because based on their price cuts over the last year and their sales volumes, they're a mainstream brand now. They're not really a premium brand anymore.
Well, I mean, it made sense to call them a luxury brand when it just had the S and the X.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 3 came out and was, it's like BMW decides to start putting out, Corollas or, a Prius or something. That's what the 3 and the Y are. It's a RAV4 and a Corolla
Yep.
or a Camry. Well, not even, well. You get inside no one's getting inside a Model Y and a Model 3 and be like, ooh, luxurious.
Yeah. They're mainstream products, and
Yeah.
with the price cuts, 20+% price cuts they had last year, they're not priced that far off of a Camry or a RAV4 in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird that they were still being like their whole lineup was being, and the company at large is being um referred to as a luxury brand. It's like, well, I mean, just because something's expensive doesn't make it luxury.
Yeah.
I mean, a saw can be really expensive, doesn't make it a luxury product. I guess if it was like diamonds and stuff on it, maybe
Yeah.
gold plating, diamond saws.
All right. And finally, Rivian. Somebody posted on Threads a little video taking their Rivian R1T uh, and charging it up at a Tesla supercharger without a magic dock.
Dun dun
So
dun.
apparently Rivian has started, there's no official announcement from Rivian, although they did say when they did their R2, R3 event recently that they would have their supercharging support sometime in the month of March. Well, apparently owners are starting to get that update. And so it's now working. So if you have a Rivian and you can get your hands on an adapter, on a J3400 to CCS adapter, or you have a Magic Dock supercharger nearby, you can just go and plug it in and it should work.
Yeah, is it the same person? Yeah, they have a link to a2zevshop.com is where they got their adapter, if you're
Okay.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah, you might want to be careful with those with
Weird third-party
third party
adapt.
ones,
Yeah.
because they haven't necessarily been UL certified, they haven't been tested, don't know how safe they're going to be, and in most cases, using some of these third party adapters, unless they've been certified by the charging station operator, they often will not work. So you might get one of those and plug it in and it just won't even start charging because it hasn't been tested and verified that it's safe. And when you're pumping hundreds of kilowatts through that adapter, you want something that's going to be safe. Don't get a cheap adapter just to save money. You don't want your vehicle to catch on fire.
Yeah, I don't see any UL stuff.
Um,
Oh, Tom did test it, I guess.
yeah,
I'm
Tom
looking.
tested the Electron one. Tom Malogny from State of
Yeah.
Charge. He's tested the Electron, and I think the other one you mentioned, the A to Z
Yeah.
one. Yeah, he's tested both of those. So they are, I think they are safe. But
I
we
don't
will
see
probably
any.
start seeing some sketchy third party ones with especially on Amazon, with random name brands that you've never heard of.
Yeah, they see because it's not UL certified because the UL 2252 hasn't been released yet.
Okay.
And then, the NACS I mean, the NACS information's out there from SAE,
Yeah.
but it's not officially a standard yet. The standard doesn't come until later this year. So there's that as well. So just FYI.
Okay.
But yeah,
All right. So that is it for this week. Hopefully Nicole will be feeling better next week, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.